but most scanners are fast. What's differentiating scanners now is software, workflows, integration, and AI.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Jenny. I'm a part of the education team at Medit. Nice to meet you, everyone. Today, we have Dr. Ahmed right here.
Hey, guys.
Dr.
How you doing?
Ahmed. Very good. So he's doing his daily practice, everything with digital method and everything with digital device. So thank you for being here, doctor.
It's my honor. Thank you, Jenny. Thank you for inviting me once again for another webinar.
Yeah, so today's topic seems very interesting and helpful for those who are considering buying intraoral scanner. So the name of the topic is utilizing intraoral scanner for maximum ROI. So doctor, can you tell us some contents that you're going to discuss with us today?
Yeah, of course. So the reason why I chose this topic is that as more and more of us either invested into scanners or are seriously thinking about investing, as any business person, you have to think of ROI, your return on investment. I mean, most practice owners are business people, money doesn't grow on trees. So when you're buying this scanner, you always have to think about, what's it going to do for me? What's it going to do for my business? And not only that, for my patients. And really what I wanted to cover today is all the different ways you can think of a scanner being useful in your practice and how you can really maximize the benefits and also the profitability out of these scanners.
Thank you. Everybody will be very interested about today's topic.
Okay. I hope so.
All right, thank you. So as always, right after the lecture is done, we are going to have the Q&A session. So we've already collected all the questions through the email in advance. So we will cover those questions today. And while watching the webinars, if you have any questions, then simply go to the chat box and write down. Then we'll reply back with your registered email. And if you have any further questions or feedback, please feel free to contact us Medit@edu and medit.com. Yeah, we also have a YouTube and Medit Academy platform. So you can utilize our Medit platform to enhance your knowledge regarding digital dentistry. Okay, that's all about it. Shall we begin, doctor?
Yes, of course. Let's make a start.
Yeah.
Okay, so a big welcome again, everyone. My name is Dr. Ahmed Al-Hasni. And once again, the topic of today is utilizing your intraoral scanner for maximum ROI in your practice. So as always, a little bit about me. I will go through this fast because I do this every webinar. But for those of you who may have not tuned in before, like I mentioned, my name is Dr. Ahmed. I'm actually a full-time dentist. I'm not only a speaker. So I work full-time in a family practice. And I've been heavily involved in digital dentistry for pretty much as long as I remember. As soon as I graduated, I graduated from the University of Otago, and I worked alongside my father and my brother, who you can see on the right there. Now, we own and operate a number of practices in New Zealand, over 35 dental chairs now in our family business. And so that's given me a lot of insight about the entire industry. We also run a lab, a full digital lab. And so I see digital dentistry from many different lenses. Firstly, as a private dentist, just like many of you. Secondly, as a practice owner. Thirdly, as someone who employs a lot of dentists, both new graduates and those who are graduated for a long time but haven't had any digital experience. And so I'm seeing, digital dentistry from all these different aspects. Now, we're early adopters of digital dentistry. In our family practice, my father's an amazing dentist. He got involved with CADCAM over 20 years ago. And now it's just a critical part of every single thing that we do. So like I mentioned, I see it from the lab side, I see it from the clinic side, and me personally, I'm a GDP, I'm not a specialist, but I would like to consider myself as a GDP who's really dived deep into a lot of quite advanced dentistry, full mouth rehab, cosmetic dentistry, orthodontics, aligners, implantology. These are all things that I love doing in my practice. And digital dentistry is a key part of all of that. And of course, that's led to the Institute of Digital Dentistry, which is actually my personal biggest passion. Education is something I really love. And yeah, so digital IDD is something that some of you may have heard about. If not, I would highly recommend you jump onto our website, instituteofdigitaldentistry.com, where you'll find a lot of free resources. We got involved with Medit scanners very early on. This was back in 2019. Some of you may remember the i500 being released around that time. And yeah, I mean, it's quite amazing to think how far the company has come and how many different options we have now. Obviously, since the i500 days, you now have i600, i700, and i700 wireless in some regions. And this is a decision a lot of you will come across. You know, when you're buying a scanner, you will no doubt be thinking of the ROI. These days, it's a little bit easier than before because I think there was a lot of hesitation even 5 years ago to buy a scanner. But these days, I think most people appreciate that, you know, it's a no-brainer now. I mean, across all our practices, we always buy a scanner. On day one, a scanner is in the dental clinic. It's as important as a dental chair. And what I wanted to share today is, you know, some of those things, some of those thought processes. How do you get your money's worth? How do you really utilize this thing? Not only for ROI, but also just for your own pleasure in dentistry, because I think digital dentistry really has the potential to completely change your practice and the results that your patients receive. One thing we do know about digital dentistry and the Medit scanners is how popular they are. This was actually a research paper that I published in May in the International Dental Journal. And I'll get out of the way for a second. You can over here scan that QR code if you want. So you can pause that video and scan that QR code to get full access of this research paper. And why I bring it up is that we surveyed over 1,000 dentists around the world. And what we found is that Medit scanners are very highly rated. This was a completely objective survey. This was not a survey that Medit paid for. In fact, there was no scanner company involved in this. So it was true to IDD and what I really hold as a key, you know, aspect of IDD is that it's objective and brand agnostic. So we surveyed over 1,000 dentists, and what we found is that Medit scanners are really popular in the market, which is no surprise given how well they've done in the market in the past few years. So why digital? I won't spend too much time on this because it's something that I've covered in previous webinars. And if you haven't seen them already, I highly recommend you see this amazing webinar series that Medit has been releasing. And we all know the benefits. You know, it's not about the benefits. This webinar today is really about the ROI. But for those of you who are still on the fence, there is a long list of benefits in getting a scanner. And if you haven't already purchased a scanner, I'm sorry to say you are falling behind in most markets. Some advanced and mature scanner markets or dental markets are up to 50% adoption of an intraoral scanner in the practice. And that's obviously led by the USA. Now, in other areas, it's as low as 10 to 15%, but I have no doubt that dentistry is in a complete transition phase, and we will see more and more adoption. So for those of you who want to learn more about the benefits, check out some of my previous webinars. But let's say you purchased a scanner. So here's the Medit i700, and you purchased it, and now you're thinking, you know, what's next? How do I utilize this in my practice? You know, what is the key things that you really need to think about to maximize ROI? And I know like ROI can seem like a dirty word for some people, but the fact of the matter is that, you know, as a dentist, as a practice owner, even as an education center or a dental school or a hospital, when you're buying a scanner, you usually have to do a proposal. You know, what is the benefit of buying this for the organization? If you're a private dentist, it's pretty simple. If you're the practice owner, you make the calls. But you also, without a doubt, will think about how do I maximize ROI? And as any good business owner, in our personal practice, we have reviewed numbers. Any good business owner should be looking at their numbers. And I left the specific dollar values because I know this is a global audience. And this is not about, how much dentists make in New Zealand. But I, without a doubt, can promise you that digitizing and utilizing digital dentistry will increase revenue. It's something that we've monitored across the over 13 dentist associates that we have, and we hire new grads, and without a doubt, it's just a no-brainer. If utilized properly, digital dentistry can, double hourly earnings. But the question is how. And we've also seen this, that was a new grad. We've also seen this with experienced dentists. Dentists, we all know that new grads usually shoot up quite fast because at the start, they don't often produce or do that well in the clinic anyway. But even with some of our experienced dentists who have been in our dental group for close to 20 years, we have noticed over the years that as we utilize more and more digital technology, that their hourly rate increases. And I think the first thing to realize, here's a picture of one of our dental rooms at the end of the day. I actually just took this picture, so excuse all the wiring. The chair is undergoing at the end of the day cleaning. But one thing to really realize, guys, is the way you utilize and maximize ROI of your scanner is you have to use it. Far too commonly, this is a sight that you see in a practice. You open the cupboard and the scanner is sitting there at the back of the cupboard. I have trained a lot of dentists over the years, and I've been to a lot of practices, and I've seen a lot of dentists sell scanners, and I always ask, why? Why are you selling it? It's far too common where a dentist buys a scanner, receives no education, no training. They don't bother to practice or train themselves. And the scanner sits in the corner of the room or in a cupboard somewhere collecting dust. This is probably the worst thing you can do with your investment when you buy a scanner. And I mean it. You really have to spend the time and the effort into training and just force yourself out of the comfort zone to use the scanner, because it is not doing anything collecting dust. So number one, and it may be a no-brainer for a lot of you, is that you really need to utilize it. You need to use the scanner. Force yourself. I personally use my scanner every single day in my practice. Hours and hours of scanning. And some of you may not even quite fully grasp what you can use a scanner for. Now, this is something I went into great detail in one of the previous webinars in the series, so do check it out. But in general, you can use your scanner for pretty much everything. Crown and bridge, splints, every appliance you can imagine, implants, implant guides, restoring implants, surgical guides, removable prosthodontics, orthodontics. You can use your scanner for basically every indication in dentistry. As I mentioned in a previous webinar, the only indications you don't use a scanner for, or let's say you need an adjunct, or you may use impression material for, is if a patient comes in completely edentulous and they want dentures. That is the only time I would take an impression. If they have teeth and it's an immediate denture, I scan that. But really the only time is a completely edentulous patient, because you're not going to get a functional impression from a scan. You take a physical impression, but then you can scan that. And why I bring this up is oftentimes I've heard from a lot of dentists is that they may use their scanner for crowns, but not for splints or orthodontic things, or not for restoring implants. My friends, the research is already established. Anecdotally, it's already established. You will hear it time and time again from people that use scanners. You can literally use a scanner for everything in dentistry. And so the way you maximize ROI is to use the scanner, utilize it for everything in your practice. It's doing no good being only used for a crown or something like that. And as I mentioned, I've used my Medit scanners for everything in dentistry, everything from a single crown, full arch impressions, implants. You may notice a couple of full arch implant restorations. This is something, again, I don't want to cover in this webinar because I'll be repeating myself. Check out the previous webinar. But fundamentally, scanning alone can be done, especially if you're just doing a temp restoration or something like that. But if you want to go from scan to final restoration for a full arch implant restoration, you still need verification jigs or to use something like photogrammetry or scan gauges. But apart from that, a scanner can be used for everything else. Implant bridges, even, quadrant dentistry, quadrant rehabs, full mouth rehabs, you just use your scanner. And so what you'll see is that in this video, this is a very simple scanning video taken live. It's not sped up or anything. You can see this crown preparation being scanned, extremely efficiently. And that's really the beauty of scanners. And this is the point that you want to get with your scanner. You want to get to the point where it's completely seamless and you can do something like this within a few seconds. And once again, I've used my Medit scanner for everything from a single crown to a full mouth rehab, as you can see here. And this is a full mouth rehab case being scanned very simply. And I can tell you, taking an impression of this case would be much more difficult. An impression of 12 crowns is not an easy feat. Whereas when you use a scanner, it is much easier, it's much more efficient. And this is really where the ROI comes from, because you are just making your clinical processes much faster, much more relaxing, easier on you, easier on the patient. Because I know you all can imagine, if you tried to take an impression of this, if you miss the margin in one of these crowns or you have an air bubble, how frustrating that is. You have to redo the whole thing. And really, this is the point you want to get to, is that where you can do these scans day in, day out, like it's nothing. It's completely easy. You're completely relaxed. And this is really where the ROI comes from. The ROI is not just how much impression you're going to save. The ROI is also the benefits for your patient in terms of comfort, in terms of their experience in the practice, and also for you. Doing this, and when it gets to the point where it's so easy that you never even look at impression material again, that's really where the ROI is. And the only way to achieve that is practice. My friends, I scan a lot, as many of you may realize or know, and I've used basically every scanner on the market. And any scanner you buy, whether it's Medit or any scanner, there is always a learning curve. And this is something that you really need to take seriously. Thankfully, these days, the learning curve is much easier than it was 7 years ago, 8 years ago, 9 years ago. Because these days, the scanners are color. There's a lot of amazing AI in the Medit scanner. It makes scanning simple. But if you think you're just going to pick up the scanner and you've never used the scanner before and it's going to be easy, you're going to have a hard time. You really need to take it seriously. When I mention you need to practice, and more importantly, practice, you need to train, because if you just practice with no training, you don't actually know what you're doing right or wrong. Someone needs to guide you, someone who's done it before, or at the very least, when you're buying these scanners from these distributors around the world, make sure they're providing you with training. The Medit team also do an amazing job. They have their own education channels. They're releasing all these webinars. They've got their own learning platform. Me at IDD, we have our learning platform, and we give away a lot of free resources, including free scanning videos, the fundamentals of intraoral scanning, and you can get that free course by scanning that QR code. So the point is that there's so much content and educational information out there. You do have to spend the time, especially when you're starting off, to learn this. Take it from me, my first ever crown scan, just a single crown, when I first started, took me about 15 minutes. And now I can easily do it within 45 seconds. Easily. If it's a quadrant, maybe 20 seconds. A full arch scan easily in 45. And that didn't happen overnight. No one is born with a scan in their hand. It just took hours of practice. And I've seen it in our new graduates that we hire that have had no scanning practice. Within a month or two of good training, you can become very proficient and very confident with the entire process. But you have to train. You have to learn how to do it. You have to learn how to scan, like things like this. Even this is a partial denture case. You have to know what to do in these cases. So you might be wondering, why did he scan the partial denture? Well, in this case, I was fitting crowns to an existing partial denture, which is one of the hardest things to do without a scanner, by the way. Fitting crowns to an existing partial denture traditionally is exceptionally annoying. You have to take the denture away from the patient, send it to the lab, whereas with a digital scan, it's super easy. But you do need to train. You need to understand, how do you do this? A lot of people think scanners can't scan metal, but here's an example. I scanned this partial denture, cobalt chrome. It comes back down to training. How do you scan? The techniques. And trust me, guys, I didn't use anything fancy here. No scan sprays, no nothing. But it's just technique and practice. Here's an edentulous scan. You know, it's these things are commonly thought as the hardest scan to take, but with good technique, with good fundamentals, and these fundamentals I cover in a previous webinar, you can do this. And part of these fundamentals are scan strategy. I don't want to go over it today because I've done it before. But the point is, you need to train and know what you're doing. You can't just pick up a scanner and just randomly approach every case. There is a strategy. There is a technique involved. And that's when you get really fast at scanning, really confident at scanning. And trust me, you'll never look at impression material again. I always joke with any student that comes through our courses that buy a scanner through a distributor and I train them how to scan. I always tell them, I want to see the impression material in your clinic expire, because you shouldn't need it. With modern scanners, you shouldn't need it. However, what next? So you buy your scanner. Let's say you get confident with scanning, you're happy, it's all going well. What's the next phase? You know, what are some of the things you can do to increase ROI? And I put this picture up. This is one of our clinics. We do have a big team. You know, we over 80 staff. And why I put the team there is because digital dentistry is a team sport. We really need to forget about this idea that the dentist is the only one that matters in the clinic, because digital dentistry involves the entire team, and you need to train the entire team to speak the language, to be proud of the technology you have in the practice, because that's when the ROI really kicks in. And I'll give you an example. What can your DA do? Your DA can do a lot for you to increase, you know, your efficiency in the practice with your scanner, which ultimately means an increased ROI. Setting up the scanner, maintenance of the equipment. You can teach your DA to scan. From my understanding, in most regulatory bodies around the world, a DA is allowed to scan. They're not manipulating any tissues. It's basically a camera. Once you teach your DA to scan, that opens up a lot of different workflows that you can incorporate in your practice. Let's say a patient loses their retainer and you're booked up for the whole day. Let's say you have two DAs, or you have a DA that's a spare one, or let's say that you can tell your DA while you're doing some sort of treatment, they can go into another room and quickly take a scan. There's a lot of things that become very beneficial when you train your DA. The other thing which we'll talk about is in-house manufacturing. Our DAs are very highly trained, and they are trained to process a lot of the materials after we've made them in-house. And that becomes a key factor in printing and milling. You can also utilize your dental assistant to help you during scanning. You'll notice in this picture on the right, my DA is retracting and she's holding the cord. That just makes the scanner feel weightless. It's these little things that can make you faster and better at scanning. And I've stressed it a lot in previous webinars. Soft tissue retraction is critical when you're scanning. without the proper fundamentals, when you're using an intraoral scanner, you will have a very hard time. And I really want to stress that you can't blame the technology. If it's not working, you need to train and make sure you can get it to work, because I can promise you, with the right training, you will never look back. It will be the best thing that ever happened to your practice. This is what I was mentioning about material processing. This is my DA Blanche. And for a lot of the CADCAM work in-house, she actually does a lot of the staining and glazing for me. And I post a lot of my work on my Instagram, the same day crowns that I do. And believe it or not, that DA is doing most of the staining and glazing. And if you want to check it out, I think you'll be blown away, because it looks amazing. It really does. It's something you can be proud of. And this is all things you can offload to the team, train the team, upskill them, because this frees you up. And by freeing yourself up, this is an increase in ROI, because you can do other things in the practice, like see more patients. What about your hygiene team? Your hygiene team is critical. If you have a hygienist in the office, orthodontic consultations, whitening consultations, scanning for splints, guards, etc. Patient monitoring is massive. If they get to the point where they're scanning most patients, especially patients that have wear, these sort of things, they can be very, very useful for patient communication and closing cases. And lastly, your reception staff. A lot of the time we only think about, the clinical staff. But your reception staff is critical in your business. Anyone will know. Your reception staff is your first point of contact most often for the practice. And, they should also be upskilled. They should know this amazing technology that you brought into this practice, and they can help market your practice. They should be excited about it, talking to patients about it. And this helps you differentiate yourself from everyone else, because as everyone knows, dentistry is not getting any easier, and it's only getting more competitive. And being digitized is one of the easiest ways to differentiate yourself and stand out in this market. The other thing is, if I show you this scan image, a lot of you won't be, that impressed by that. A lot of you have seen these images before. It's not that amazing. It's not, 2020, it's not 2010 anymore, where a color scan is amazing to a dentist. However, to your patients and just the average Joe that comes off the street into your practice, a lot of the times I feel like dentists are quite numb to this now, because we see it all the time. But this is mind-blowing for a lot of patients to see this. And I really suggest that a lot of you engage your patients with this technology. Whether you plug your scanner onto a chair-side monitor, or the roof monitor if you have one, or a big TV in your practice, you really should be showing the patient this. This is a really good way of engaging them and improving communication. And this is part of the other thing about ROI, is that you need to utilize your scanners to their full potential. A scanner these days is not just a digital impression tool. It's not just a tool to replace impression material. It's so much more than that. It's such a powerful communication tool. And there's so much wow factor involved when you show your patients this. I see it time and time again where patients' eyes light up when they see this. Or classic cases, if a patient comes in with a partner, or if it's an orthodontic consultation and a parent is there, and I scan the kid's teeth. The parent, is just amazed by this technology, and it builds so much trust. One way to utilize your scanner, especially with the Medit scanners, is to really get comfortable with the software. There are so many software features here. The Medit scanners are some of the most feature-rich scanners on the market. The scanner software is unbelievable. And you only know that when you start using different scanners. The vast majority of scanners on the market do not have any apps. They're just totally digital impression tools. Whereas with Medit, you get all these apps for free. It's actually kind of mind-blowing. And I'll go over those. And so there are a lot of useful tools that you can use as communication tools. And tools to engage and excite the patient to close cases, to sell more treatment, to increase case acceptance, smile design apps, orthodontic simulators, caries detection, patient monitoring. There's so many things. And that leads us to the Medit apps. The Medit apps are the number one reason why, Medit stands out in the market. Because as I mentioned, guys, I use every scanner on the market, and frankly, every scanner can scan now. It's not 5 years ago when there was big differences in speed. Some are still faster than others now, but most scanners are fast. What's differentiating scanners now is software, workflows, integration, and AI. And in the software game, Medit, are completely outclassing the vast majority of scanners on the market. And I want to go over those briefly. I've covered these in a previous webinar. I hate to keep saying that, but you should check them out. But Orthodontic Simulator. So you can use this free app. You'll need to train a little bit to how to use it because you don't want to look silly in front of the patient. But if you train and you know how to use this app, you can show really quick, efficient orthodontic simulations to the patient. This is exceptionally powerful if the patient has any interest in orthodontics. There's caries detection that was just released. It is a beta version at this stage, but you can see there's so many features now that a scanner is not just for scanning, it's for communication. There's smile design. This has been an app in Medit for a long time now, and they keep improving it. And for any cosmetic patient or a patient that's interested in cosmetic dentistry, this is a no-brainer. I think any dentist these days who wants to improve their case acceptance in veneers and crowns and cosmetic cases has to use some form of smile design app. That is how modern dentistry is carried out these days. And then there's the CADCAM. So we've got the communication, but then you also have the actual CADCAM, where you have all your inputs, you put it into a CAD software or the Medit apps, and then you actually want to fabricate something like milling or printing something. And that also gets very interesting because in my opinion, guys, the best ROI is with some form of in-house production. When you're just scanning, it's nice, you get a lot of benefits and you save impression material. But when you start moving some production in-house, you cut your lab bill. We personally cut our lab bill by 90%, and then we created an in-house lab. So it's just completely changed the whole business kind of approach and also the whole dynamic in the entire business. And I don't think that everyone needs to have a full in-house lab, but at the very least, some things, especially with the rise of 3D printing, can be moved in-house quite easily these days. And that brings me to milling machines. It's not a topic I want to spend too much time on, but just know you can either go down the CEREC route or using a CEREC mill with a Medit scanner with in-lab, or there's a lot of different other milling machines. VHF, IMES iCore, DG Shape are the popular ones. If you need help choosing a milling machine for your practice, just reach out to me and I'm more than happy to go over the pros and cons. Then more excitingly is printing, and printing is much more of an exciting product or a topic than milling because frankly, it's just much cheaper. The cost and barrier of entry is much lower than a milling machine. And so with printing, it's incredible what you can do in the practice now. I don't believe all this hype that printing will replace milling machines. I think that's ridiculous, but there's definitely this dynamic, and any modern lab or modern practice that is doing in-house production will no doubt utilize both milling and printing because they complement each other. And that brings me to the Medit apps. So Medit has an incredible model builder, by far the best model builder on the market. And this allows you to scan and quickly make models that then, if you have a printer in-house, you can print. And you might be wondering, why would I print a model? All your suck down appliances, thermoform appliances, sports guards, night guards, splints, retainers, all these things, study models, orthodontic models, anything that you can imagine that you need a stone room in your practice for pouring up models, this is where you use a printer for. And you can't print scans. You need to use a model builder. Then the Medit software has Medit splints. So you can design splints very quickly. It is in its it's not quite beta or alpha stage. It's more developed than that. But the company is constantly improving the software. And you can make some splints. And the more you design and spend time, you can really make some nice products that you can then 3D print in-house. More excitingly is Medit CAD. This was just recently released. And for anyone who's interested, I highly suggest you sign up for their event in October, where the Medit company is going over all their apps. And basically, Medit CAD is their full-bred CAD software or CAD application. And right now, it's still in its infancy. It's in a beta. And I feel like this is an extension of Medit Design and Medit Temporaries. But if Medit can pull this off, they will truly disrupt the CAD space, which has been dominated by 3Shape and ExoCAD. And this is a case I actually did with Medit CAD as I was involved in the beta and testing it. And so this is a common scenario. You can do your crown preparation. And this was all done with Medit CAD, all in-house. Obviously, it was milled. This is a milled Emax restoration. And you can see the radiograph here. And I think most of us would be more than happy with those margins. A single Emax restoration block is around 25 USD, around about that, maybe less. And you can compare that to what you're getting charged for your lab fee. So in New Zealand dollars, an Emax restoration can be $200, $300, $400. And so really that's where the ROI comes in from purely a monetary point of view. So how do you maximize ROI? Firstly, you need to invest. You need to go out there and get a scanner. Yeah, there's no point sitting on the fence anymore. You really need to take charge, appreciate that this is the future of dentistry, and the sooner you get onto it, the better. You need to train, and you need to train and practice. And trust me, I know it hurts. Just like learning any skill in dentistry, you go back to feeling like a dental student, and it's not a good feeling. But after a few months, you'll never look back. I suggest you get the team involved. Once you train yourself and you're proficient and fully confident, train your DA, train your hygienist, train your associates. Teach your whole practice what this scanner is and what this amazing technology you brought into the practice is. Use the Medit apps. You should really utilize the Medit software in its entirety, especially the apps. This is really what differentiates Medit from all other scanners. And if you're really, really interested, I highly suggest you consider in-house production. In-house production is probably the biggest factor from purely a monetary point of view that will increase your ROI. And that's basically it, my friends. As I mentioned at the start, I run the Institute of Digital Dentistry. We have a huge library of online courses because I'm based in New Zealand. We're very geographically isolated, so it's not easy for people to come to me. So I created an online platform, basically the Netflix of digital dentistry. And if you're interested, you can scan the QR code and check that out. Otherwise, thanks for watching. Thanks for your attention. And I hope you got something out of today. And I welcome any questions.
Thank you for sharing all your tips with us, Dr. Ahmed. I'm sure many clinicians will decide to move on to digital treatment, or for those who already have scanners will get the idea of utilizing maximum ROI, as you told us today.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Okay, so let's move on to Q&A session. So there are four quiz today. So question number 1. Do you have any preference of scanning position when you are doing upper and lower arch scanning?
That's a good question, and that really comes into almost personal preference. So I actually stand when I do all my dentistry. I know that might be a little bit crazy, but something that I've kind of just gotten used to. So when I am scanning or doing any dentistry, really, I'm always at the 10 to 11 o'clock. 10 to 11 o'clock position is where I usually stand. When I'm scanning, I'm also at that position. Even for the lower arch, which I know some people say you can stand more like 7 o'clock in front of the patient to scan. I personally don't find that useful. I usually stick around 10 to 11 o'clock, and that's how I do all my scanning.
That means even if for upper and lower, you stay with the same position, right?
Always the same position. And more importantly, about positioning that I really want you guys to conceptualize is I've seen some dentists where they don't get a scanner cart and they have their laptop on their desk or something like that. And ergonomically, that's a terrible position. You know, you're looking over your shoulder to scan. I really suggest everyone gets a scanner cart, and you make sure that your scanner is, if you're at the 10 to 11 o'clock position, your DA should be about 2 to 3 o'clock, and your scanner cart is 1 o'clock, so right in front of you. So that's really the position I like to be in, staring at the scanner cart, staring at my scan image while I'm scanning.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for answering that. So question number 2, is there any specific case that you take conventional impression instead of digital scanning?
Great question. And it's like I mentioned in the indications part, there's only one time I would do that, and that is for a completely edentulous patient. And that is purely to get a functional impression. And that's if I was going straight to a final denture. If I was going to make them a temporary denture, I would be more than happy to just scan them and make something that's a bit looser fitting. But 9 times out of 10, if I'm seeing a completely edentulous patient, I will take a traditional impression and then scan that impression and send it to the lab. Otherwise, I do not take physical impressions for any other indication in my practice, including full arch, implant restorations, including implant bridges. Everything is scanned.
Okay. Okay, question number 3. I'm a new user and trying to use Medit apps. Which apps do you find the most useful, and which app do you utilize the most in your clinic?
I would say, I mean, to be honest, the most useful is Medit Model Builder by far. I think that is probably one of the best model builders on the entire market. But that's really only useful for you if you're doing something in-house, if you're going to print. If you don't have a printer, a Medit Model Builder isn't that useful for you. I would say if you're just wanting a communication tool, I would get very comfortable using the Orthodontic Simulator and Smile Design. Those are 2 very powerful apps if you train and learn how to use them properly. Otherwise, one really exciting app is Medit Clinic CAD, and I really am excited about this app, especially regarding what it may do to in-house production and that whole dynamic. A free CAD software is incredible to think about.
Okay, so last question, number 4. Can you explain more in detail about AI about matching function in Medit?
Of course. So the AI abutment matching feature is a feature in the Medit software where, let's say you have an implant that you want to restore. Typically, you're going to screw in a scan body. I know some people still do abutment level scans and scan an abutment, but most of us are using scan bodies. So let's say you screw in a scan body and you scan it. When you send this to the lab has a digital library of that scan body, basically a digital scan body, and they will match it to your scan. That is basically the lab side of making an implant restoration. It's kind of like the digital analog. So what the Medit software enables you to do is import that library into the software. And where do you get that library? From the implant companies. And when you import that library into the software, when you're scanning, it will automatically tell you if it's been able to, join the digital analog to your scan. And what that allows you to do is basically get verification that you've scanned the scan body correctly and there's enough data for your lab. That's how it works. And it's an excellent feature. Not mandatory. I personally don't use it because in my experience, I've done this many, many times. I just scan the scan body and I know when I've got enough data, which basically means I capture everything. But if you want to have that extra level of verification, it's an amazing tool.
Okay, thank you for easy explanation.
My pleasure.
Okay, that's all about it for today.
Thanks for joining, guys, and I'll see you on the next webinar. And thanks again for Medit for inviting me. It's a huge honor to be on this webinar series.
It was such a pleasure to have you here, and you'll be able to watch this webinar on our YouTube channel and also Medit Academy. So if you have any questions, please feel free to contact us, Medit Edu and Medit.com. Thank you for being here, Dr. Ahmed.
Thank you, Jenny. See you later. See you guys.
Thank you.